Welcome to Gigacast episode 16 for Sunday, June 3rd, 2018, live to tape from the Gigacast headquarters. I'm Britton Johnson.
And broadcasting live from my home lab, I'm Tony Reeves.
Wow, it's been almost a little over a month since we did one of these, Tony.
Been quite a while, yeah.
And I have had a month that was good and mostly bad. And it's just been a freaking crazy ride.
The month went by.
Yeah, I mean, we last talked to Ariel Sanchez more from VMware, while I was still in Boston. And since then, I came home and I was home for like a little bit, worked a little teeny tiny bit. And then all of a sudden my daughter got really, really, really sick. My 3-year-old daughter, she's deaf. She has a cochlear implant, and the implant got infected on the skin level, and she was in the hospital for a week, and then subsequently on 2 weeks of 24 hours antibiotics. So we just finished all that. She's fine, and it's just been 3 weeks of hell around here. So
I'm glad to hear she's doing better, though.
It's been a mess, but we are just it's just been one thing after another. And I'm super excited to be kind of getting into June, because May was horrible. So I'm really excited that May is over, that we are into June, and it's summertime. And the only bad thing happening right now is mosquitoes have showed up in my backyard.
Oh yeah, tell me about it.
So hey, what has? Do you have some news, Tony?
Do I have some news?
Did you get something today?
Oh, yes. My awesome wife got me an exotic car experience. So I'd be driving a Ferrari 488 GTB at Road America, which is a really awesome racetrack here in Wisconsin. So
yes,
look forward to that. It's a few months away, but it's going to be worth the wait. It'll be pretty awesome.
Yeah. So, well, I was excited to help her a little bit in that process. So
yeah, you're sneaky on the back end. I heard you've been working on that for a few days.
Well, you do what you can. I just realized I forgot to start the video recording, but that's okay. We have the audio rolling.
I was like, did he really just do that?
I just blew the whole intro.
Way to go.
Oh, well. You know what? That was really good, so I'm going to stick with it. We're just going to power through.
Yes, we are.
All right, so we have an amazing special guest with us today. This is Andre. I already forgot how to say your last name.
Leibovici. Is it the time where I come in and say my last name?
Leibovici, right?
Leibovici.
Yes. I was saying it in my head at first. I was saying it like you were Italian, like Leibovici, but that's just not, So, Andre, you are the CTO at Datrium, correct?
I'm vice president for solutions and alliances, and I also act as field CTO.
Oh, okay.
Which is just a fancy word to say that I go out and talk to customers, right? I guess.
All right.
Field CTO is the new evangelist, I guess.
Is that okay?
The new tech marketing.
Well, that's why when you go.
Yeah, but I'm not in marketing, right? So I'm actually I have a team who manages all the solutions, reference architectures, papers, benchmarks at the application level, and I also have a team who manages all the partnership and alliances that we have with all the vendors out there, like VMware and Oracle, SAP, and so on. So it's a bit of the mix there.
Cool. Well, thank you for joining us. This your being here, I have to kind of go back a little bit, because I'm going to kind of bring about what started this whole thing. So a small amount of history, and then we'll go into a little bit more introduction on you. So this all happened because of Twitter, mostly. I sent out a tweet because of some customers of mine are looking for solutions as always. And so I sent a generic question tweet out. Who has the best play for SMB 3 to 6 node, hyperconverged solutions? And I tagged Nutanix, Pivot3, HP, and Datrium. And of course I got a myriad of responses, and I think yours, to your credit, Andre, was probably the most thoughtful of all of them.
Thank you.
And initially I got a response from one of the guys who is actually the founder and CEO of Nutanix, and he kind of gave me this response, something along the lines of, I just had it and lost it. I hate that. I wanted to read it because
Twitter's a fickle beast sometimes.
Yeah, I have to scroll all the way back down and find this because I don't want to mess up what he said, and since it's a public tweet, I don't feel bad quoting him.
Was it something related that no operational system has ever been built for?
Yes,
SMB.
Yeah.
I remember that,
and it struck me as, not the nicest response, I guess. To a potential customer question. So his response was, there is no SMB only operating system for the data center, by the way, in the history of IT. HCI is about the entire OS, compute, storage, networking, security, ops management, system management, migration, etc. Good enterprise products trickle down, end quote. And he kind of, that response sort of sent me on a mini tirade response back at him, which I didn't get any responses from. But I agree with some of what he said, but mostly I don't, because, I've been in, small business IT consulting for many years, and, and working in small IT operations for many years. And my experience, from the Midwestern American experience of working in IT, that last sentence of good enterprise products trickle down is completely false. I mean, it may sort of, and I know that the people in Silicon Valley think that their stuff does, but when it gets to the Midwest, where we don't have $500,000 budgets for IT departments,
right,
it just doesn't work. And so that's the thing that I was looking for is, what's the solution that fits the real meat and potatoes, mom and pop small businesses, where they don't have a full dedicated IT staff of 5 people even, and yeah, we can do that. One of my responses was, and I said this back to him at one point. I said I usually have to shoehorn a small client into something that kind of works, and it would change my business if I had an HCI solution that was truly plug and go and had options to scale. That would be amazing for me in my business, and for thousands of businesses everywhere. And that's where I kind of just got off on this rant with him, and I'm just I didn't like it, first of all. And so thank you for being willing to come on here and talk to us about what Datrium has to do to offer and how you guys fit into this. But that's kind of how this all started. So tell us more before we get into what Datrium is. Tell us more about you, kind of how you came to where you are today, and things like that.
Yeah, no, sure. So, well, as you can see, I'm not originally from here. I'm not American, right? Most people wouldn't guess. I'm actually from Brazil. I moved from Brazil to Australia. I lived for almost 10 years in Australia. I joined VMware in Australia, moved with EMC to the United States. I moved back to VMware, where I went to be one of the core software architects for Horizon View with VMware product in the CTO office. And one of the things that really tricked me always is seeing how these companies failing in deploying VDI specifically, right? I've done customer IT, and I was a IT manager for entire Asia Pacific when I was in Australia before joining VMware. So I do have over 20 years of experience in just managing data centers. But this is the past, right? Yeah. So when I was at VMware and dealing with VDI and customers, I saw so many customers failing in doing VDI, and not because of VDI specifically, but because it's hard to scale application performance and capacity at the same time when you talk about storage, right? And compute in general. So I left VMware. I went to Nutanix. I spent almost 4 years at Nutanix myself. Joined Nutanix. We were about 200, 300 people. When I left, it was over 3,000. We were over 3,000 people.
Holy cow!
Right. And then
what kind of time span was that?
It was 3.5 years,
Oh
about 3.5 or four, almost 4 years, something like that.
That's just
So there's a massive growth, but that's how those companies in Silicon Valley work, right?
yeah.
So basically, you have some genius engineers. They put a product together that makes sense and fits it has a fit to a market, and then the venture capital companies come and inject a ton of money to make these companies grow. So they start hiring a lot of engineers and hiring a lot of salespeople and make the whole thing happen, right? And then you see what happens out there. You see some companies, not only in Nutanix, there are many out there where it's a big company, it's growing well, it might even be public, but when you look at the numbers, the companies are still not profitable, right?
Yep.
There's some great examples out there. But anyway, about a year ago, actually about 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, I left Nutanix and I came to Daydream. And that's where I've been so far. Don't see me leaving anytime soon because I honestly, I've been in the hypervisor space, I've been in the storage space, I've been on the customer side, and I see Daydream as the next evolution and really game-changing technology for the data center. Independent of, I'm not talking about protocols and anything like that, but I'm talking about scalability, how you scale the data center, how simple it is to operate, and so on. We're going to talk about a little bit more about that here.
Yeah, sure.
But that's sort of like my background. So, I've been customer side, I've been with VMware, I've been with EMC, Nutanix, and now Daydream.
That's.
And by the way, sorry to hear about your daughter.
Yeah, no, it's all good now. I mean, it's just one of those things where it happens. But thank you. We're just hoping that at this point she's done with this. That's what, and that's the thing you learn when you go through, any type of infection. When you're dealing with the infectious diseases teams at a hospital, they give you this cocktail of antibiotics, and they just kind of cross their fingers and say, "Well, we'll see what happens in a month." And it's not very reassuring, but.
Yeah, I have my own stories with a child and hospitals and all that, but that's a different.
Yeah, well, thank you. So your background is that helps a lot. So I wanted to bring up one other thing on Daydream that this was one of my first introductions to them as a company was through our local VMware user group. And we had somebody from Daydream at some point came and gave a presentation about something about Daydream. This was probably 2-3 years ago, maybe. Maybe two, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Yeah,
it was a while ago. And I don't want to say anything. I can't say anything necessarily specifically bad about the person who gave the presentation because I think he did a good job, he did his job. But at the end of it, I had really no idea what Daydream was or what really their solution was. It was kind of all I knew by the end of it was that whatever you guys did, you did it really, really fast.
Actually, it was not fast. I mean, the company was founded.
I mean, like performance-wise. I mean, like.
Performance-wise. Yes, absolutely.
That's what I mean. Is like performance-wise, your product, whatever it did it really quickly. That was the takeaway that I had from the talk that I saw, and so and it kind of left me in this thing of like. I don't know if they're a storage company. I don't know if they're if they're competing with ESXi, and that was my initial introduction. And I came through that now, and I obviously know a little bit more about things. But I just you guys were kind of always just out there, and I knew you existed, but I just didn't have a clear picture as to what you actually.
Yeah. Hopefully, you're hearing more and more about us by now. So why don't we do the following? May I propose something? Let's go back and sort of try to understand why are we doing HCI? Why are we talking about open conversions? Why are we doing all this? Why people care about it? Why do people care about the OPEX model? Why do we care about those things?
And I think that I think you're right on a good path there because 2 VMworlds ago, I ran across another company's called Maxta. And when I saw kind of what they were doing, and I saw this in a couple of, you always see this occasionally at tech conferences, I walked away with this feeling of, why do I need these guys when I have VMware? And so that's sort of a good, I think, answer those. Like, let's talk about it in that sort of a sense of why does someone need you guys? Like, what makes you different from other platforms?
Absolutely. So let's just remember, because I know you understand the area, but maybe some people that are listening to this podcast don't really understand. And I know that because I talk to many customers out there, and they're still trying to figure out what I think now people sort of get what HCI is, but they're still trying to figure out, is this the right way to go? Should I stay with SANS? Should I go look further, like what's next beyond HCI and so on? So just to quickly remember, we moved from HCI from SAN to HCI because we were after simplicity. We were looking to better performance with flash inside the hosts, right? And in many cases, some companies decided to make it very easy to manage an environment, right? So it further an automated patch management, hypervisor upgrades, and so on. And in that category, I would probably put all HCI vendors today. VMware with vSAN and Nutanix and so on. Nutanix is now in a different path. They want to become a hypervisor company. They tie into their own cloud. So they're going in a different route, right? And VMware has their vSAN with their product, but all these products sort of like work similar, right? They may have small differences out there, but generally speaking, they work similar. You have servers that are powered by hypervisor. You have a virtual controller running there, and all the servers talk to every other server, and the data is spread across the cluster in multiple pieces. And the VMs run out of VMs, or the data, whatever you're running there, is running out of local flash. That's the basic premise of HCI, right? So your question is fair. If I have all these vendors and I'm already with VMware, why do I need others, right? And it's absolutely fair. And I think that's one of the major reasons why you see some of the companies wanting to become hypervisor companies, because they want to have their own stack and say it's free, right? Or not free because you're maybe paying VTax or you're paying too much for VMware. But it's your decision at the end of the day to decide which hypervisor you're going to stick with, right? You might decide to go Hyper-V, you might decide to go Red Hat virtualization. But the reality, as we all know, is VMware has 600,000 customers, and they're not losing any customers anytime soon.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I heard somebody once talk about something being free is like getting a free puppy.
Sure, that's marketing, right? I'm not going to discuss marketing the same way I'm not going to discuss what Dheeraj was trying to say with good enterprise products trickle down. The reality is that evolution and innovation runs faster than an enterprise product. So, we're starting to see containers and then Kubernetes, and now we're starting to see umbrella products like OpenShift and PKS to trying to manage Kubernetes and containers. Like, if enterprise products trickle down, they need to do all that, and it needs to keep evolving faster than the overall industry. And that's just not going to happen. A company startup have maybe one or two places where they innovate. They can't innovate everywhere. Yeah. So the reality is that even if you stick with Kubernetes with like with Nutanix, you might be looking at something more advanced just 6 months down the track, because innovation keeps happening. And so another company that's focusing on that specific area will innovate faster. So that's the reality, right? But going back to HCI and open convergence and so on. So here's the thing. So HCI in general simplified the data center, made it easy to manage. It removes the concept of zoning, LAN, masking, every complexity that we had in managing SANs and so on, things that you all know already, right? Mm-hmm. But there are a few things that HCI never solves or created as problems in the data center. So first of all, HCI requires a specific hardware compatibility list, right? You can't just go and get any server that you have in your data center and say, hey, I want this to be part of my HCI solution. Some of them are more locked, some of them are more open, right? Mm-hmm. So, if you're going to go buy Nutanix, you need to buy that specific model, either if it's from them or from a different vendor. If you go with VMware vSAN, you need to buy that specific model with that specific RAID controller, with those specific SSDs, and build sort of like a reference architecture. It's not whatever you want. You can't bring just what you have in place, right? So you have a level of hardware lock-in, and you need, generally speaking, net new infrastructure. That works well for companies that are doing like brand new deployments, but for the large majority of companies, that's just not going to fly. That's one thing. My favorite topic is a different one. In the SAN time frame, the servers used to be stateless. There's no data there, right? So the data was living on the SAN. The server fails. You restart the virtual machine in a different server. The data now goes through over the network, and you're up and running. With HCI, we've made servers stateful. There's actually data in those servers. So when you have server loss, you actually have resiliency issues. Sure, you have 2-3 copies of the data across the cluster, but until that data is recreated, you have a data resiliency problem. So when you start to talk about RF2, RF3, FTT1, FTT2, whatever, every vendor has a different type of naming convention for how many copies of the data. But let's say you have FTT1, right? You have a cluster or RF2, and you have one server fail. Now you have one bit of data. If you have one read error in a different drive, something that's fairly common, then you're down to backup, right? And backup is something that you just don't want to rely on. That's your insurance, right? So that's the other thing that HCI kind of created a problem there. Also, generally speaking, and that will vary by vendor, because of the amount of traffic on the network between servers, and also because of the metadata that needs to be handled by all the servers, because most servers need to know where most things are, you have small clusters, right? You'll see small, maybe not for SMBs or not for a small company in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But when you're talking small, I'm talking something between 10 and 20 servers. You can't really go much further than that. And in larger scale deployments, you will need to re-architect your network in spine leaf architecture. That's just the reality. And it might be okay for some companies as well. It might be okay.
Yeah.
Now think about that. You go into an environment that is also net new, and you need to forklift all your data into this new environment. So it becomes a silo on its own. We were trying to get out of silos of SANs and arrays and so on, and now we're down to that. And one thing that was never solved in HCI is the backup. Right, you still need your third-party backup tool like you would need with SAN. So those are the things in general why Datrum was created. So let me now talk about how we solved that.
Target customers are, Andre. Who do you think the target customers are for this platform?
So we validated our platform. This is real third-party validation, right? By IOMark. We worked with Dell and Intel, and we validated our solution up to 128 servers. And today is the fastest storage platform in the world, lowest latency, and most scalable. So it's big.
In terms of kind of the smaller businesses that we deal with. So
yeah,
you said
I'm getting there.
Okay.
So
how low does it go?
It's big. That said, we can start with one server and one data node. So it's pay as you grow, as you can imagine, right?
And what kind of redundancies then do you get? So what kind of redundancy options do you get with one node, though?
Yeah.
You're gonna get erasure coding, which is N+2 parity, which is RAID 6 type. Okay. Data protection, which is equivalent to RF3 as an example.
Okay.
And that's the only thing we offer. We don't offer lower data redundancy. Like we haven't been doing RAID 5 for the past 25 years, 15, 20 years. saying, why suddenly with hyperconvergence we're now back to 2 copies redundancy? It doesn't make any sense. That said, think with me about this. HCI HCI was like Google file system was created by Google with the Google GFS, right? Which is the ability to split data and so on. Back in the early 2000s. Okay. In 2003, they released the paper, the well-known Google file system paper. By 2005, they were not even doing that anymore. They moved on from HCI. That's not what Google do today, right? So some people got that idea and say, let's take that to the market. Let's make it enterprise. So when they looked for the solution, said, what kind of workload will fit here? And they found the VDI as being sort of like the one workload that you can scale out linearly, right? As you add compute, you add capacity, and you keep going. What happened for those vendors is that at that point in time, they didn't have enterprise data service, but as they wanted to take on new workloads, they had to start adding all those data services. So add compression, add deduplication. RF2 is not good. Add RF3 or more resiliency and so on. So it just so happens that over time, all the simplicity that was promised from HCI is not there anymore. How you as an administrator, if you have 10 VMs, it's fine. You know what you're running. You know if the duplication is going to be good. You know if compression is going to be good or not. You know what type of resiliency, redundancy you should have. But when you have 50, 100, 1,000 VMs, 10,000 VMs, how do you, as an administrator, know what should be enabled or disabled for any of that? And that is the legacy that you left with HCI today. Because their solution that was not properly thought out from the beginning was testing the market.
Yeah. And that's just architecture in a nutshell, right? Is if you don't think about things, as they can scale, you're going to run into problems one way or another. I mean,
but that is applicable to SMB as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why one shop with one admin should have to worry about erasure coding and RF2 and RF3 and compression and duplication and this and that? It should be simple.
So, and that's sort of like, you talked about, there's backups involved in some of this as well. And I've heard that from other people talk about Datrium, that you guys are kind of like, Nutanix mixed with, like Cohesity or Rubrik or something like that, where you have a little bit of this, production stuff, but there's also, some sort of backup service in there as well. So do you not need a third-party backup solution or do you not even work with solutions like Veeam or Zerto or,
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that we partner with Veeam, we partner with Cohesity, we partner with Rubrik, but to some extent, yes. We don't need that. So at a high level, our solution is primary storage. We have servers. You can bring your own existing infrastructure, or you can buy servers from us, or you can buy from any vendor you want.
Okay.
All we require is that the server be compatible with the VMware hardware compatibility list.
Okay.
And you have one or two SSDs in there. So imagine like HCI, all your VMs and applications are running local, are reading local. All the reads are local from SSDs or NVMEs, right?
Yep.
Now, the writes, the way HCI, it happens that a write is local, and then you have one or two copies going to different servers on the cluster, right, over the network. That's how HCI works. We do differently. So we do one write is local, and then the write is erasure-coded, distributed erasure-coded, multiple copies of the data in what we call a data pool. So this data pool is something that we have that we call the data node. We sell this appliance. It's an appliance. It has literally just a JBOD. There's no controllers in this machine. The controllers is software. It goes in your hypervisors, just like HCI. Not a VM, but it goes in vSphere. It's a VIB. You deploy as a VIB in vSphere. And if you're running with Red Hat virtualization, KVM, it's a kernel mode driver as well. And by the way, we also support bare metal servers, but I'll get there. So we erasure code this data on this secondary pool of storage. So you have the servers, and then you have the secondary pool of storage.
Okay.
So your servers become your all flash array. Everything is running on flash, right? Reads, we're talking about microsecond latency. You can have it as NVMe. We have some customers running with NVMe for over 2 years now. And then we erasure code the data back to this data pool, this data node, the data nodes that also scale linearly, one after the other. And that is a secondary storage. That is your backup. So now back to the stateful versus stateless servers, right? Before you had stateless server. With HCI, we went to stateful servers. Now, with Datrium, you do have data on those servers, but the protection of the data is on the data pool, on the data nodes. So if your server fails, it doesn't matter. We just quickly upload the data into any other server where the VMs moved to or were restarted by AJ, as an example. So what that allows us to do is grow performance independent of capacity.
Okay.
So I can add servers with just a single SSD from 1 to 128 servers without even growing my pool of capacity. Just one SSD minimum, right? I think it's 408 gig, the minimum. And if I need capacity, I can just keep adding the data nodes. And that's one of the big problems with HCI, because I talk to many customers, and I've been in the HCI world. You end up with either a lot of compute that you don't need, or a lot of capacity, because every server, when you need compute, you need to add storage. When you need storage, you need to add compute. And that's just the reality. So that's one of the big advantages, the performance and capacity disaggregation. The second is leverage your existing infrastructure. Bring your servers as part of the solution. Now the servers are stateless again, as I mentioned. We work across platform. You may have VMware, it's a VMware shop, but large organizations might have Red virtualization, you might have bare metal applications. We can provide the same single unified namespace with all enterprise data services across all the platforms. So all your servers connected to the same environment, to the same data pool, to the same namespace. So now going back to yes.
I'm just there's a lot going on here.
I see a light bulb going on there.
Well, and we Andre, we've spent a fair amount of time talking vSAN and other, that has been the primary conversation we've had around. We talked to Jason McCarty recently. So in terms of how Datrium handles this, from what you're hearing here, Tony, I mean, is this kind of really that much different from what vSAN does as a core product from VMware?
Well, I'm trying to understand the overall architecture. So it sounds like you've got your compute nodes that have your storage, standard HCI, but you also have a separate physical data appliance as well in this architecture?
That's correct. That's what we call the data node.
Okay. The data node.
And that device basically has enough compute power to run its operations?
It doesn't run. It's only storage capacity.
Oh, so it's just a storage blade, period.
Yeah, but there's no compute there. This is a server-powered storage solution. All the processing, the erasure coding, duplication, compression, everything happens on the servers.
So it's all software defined.
It's completely software defined. Okay. Today we sell the data node. Maybe eventually in the future we will allow you to get just a server as well and use as data node.
Okay, so continue with your architecture questions, Tony, because I know you have more.
Yeah. So, do you have any kind of a roadmap or anything that we could look at in terms of something you could direct somebody that has more architecture questions to on your website? Because I'm looking at it, I don't see anything really clearly laid out in some of these questions that we have. It's like a quick map of something that people can look at.
Okay, that's actually a good feedback for our marketing team.
I'm on your architecture page right now, and it has just okay, it's got your data node and it's got your compute node, and I get that, but I'd like to see kind of a layout of how that works. And
if I'll share something here.
There we go. We got some slides.
This is why we record the video.
So,
well, I had it.
Yeah.
I see a white strip.
You see what?
It's just a white line.
I saw it for a second and then it disappeared.
Oh,
there we go. Now it's back.
Oh, okay. So what you see here is you see the servers on top with SSDs.
Yep.
Hold on, how do I get rid of this?
And are there cache and capacity disks like vSAN has, or is it just straight up SSD for multi-purpose?
Just a straight up SSD. We don't have any overhead of RAID or erasure coding or anything like that because the data is protected in the data pool. So if you lose a server, it doesn't matter. We just quickly upload the data into a different server where the VM or the application is running now.
From the data.
Yes.
Okay.
And because we run always on inline deduplication and compression, those SSDs, and there, by the way, there's no option to disable, right? So it's everything that I tell you here is always on compression, always on deduplication, always on erasure coding. It's everything given for you as part of the solution. You don't have as an administrator to make is this going to work with this? Is this a better solution for this other application? We actually did some tests. Some applications are incompressible, right? They're not going to be compressible. Some applications that have a very low level of deduplication and so on. But across a wide range of workloads, we've done some tests. If you were to actually choose what to enable and disable for certain applications, you would get back 1 or 2% of your total compute. So everything is on by default. It's very simple. There's nothing to actually manage. So going back to the architecture.
So it looks like you're complete cross-platform. I see you've got VMware in there, you've got Red Hat. So you have that all different compute nodes, and then it's on the same shared data node.
Correct.
Okay, that's interesting.
Correct. Yeah, imagine a SAN. Now you pull the controllers out, make it as a software stack in each one of the servers with SSDs on the server. And the system is intelligent enough to make sure that all the data that you need for that server is on the server, living on those SSDs. And a copy of that data is stored, fully protected, N+2 in this data pool.
So this kind of seems to me like it's kind of a split of legacy SAN and vSAN. I mean, you have
not vSAN necessarily, HCI, right?
Right, HCI overall, but it looks like you've got your SSD kind of caching tier. You said you can keep things tiered up there on the individual nodes to make them run faster, but it's kind of whole technology.
It would be caching if we had only the hot data there, right? The data that's in use at the moment. But because of the inline deduplication and compression, and because we don't have the overhead of RAID as an example, because we size the servers to feed the entire data set on the server, it becomes really your all-flash solution and not just hot caching as an example.
Okay. So it is used for storage on the nodes as well.
It is used for storage on the node as well, yes.
So then the data node is used for what exactly? It's for...
So that's your backup. So if you look at the top tier and see there's your all-flash array, everything is flash. And then see the secondary part, the bottom, the data pool, as your cohesity, as your rubric. Scale out, backup for your data set. That's the way you see. So now I have customers that come back to me and say, hey, so do I need to keep paying my existing backup vendor? My answer is it depends. We will take care of your backup for sure, just like Rubrik and Cohesity will do it, but we do that for workloads and applications running on Datrium. The reality is that data centers have solutions and systems that have been running for the past 15, 20 years, run on need different types of in-guest backups and a bunch of different things that we are not focused in providing. And that's why we partner with, Cohesity is a big partner, Rubrik is a partner, Veeam is a partner, and we all work together.
Yeah, and then does your data node, does that replicate to cloud then, if you need to?
Yeah, so that's the second piece.
Or even
and I think
stretching to another data center somewhere else if you have more space to put things.
Yeah, I was not planning to present that, but I think you
cross Datrium replication.
I think you enjoy this. So yes, there you see. So you have also the all-flash primary storage with VMware, Red Hat, all new and existing servers, and any vendor you want. Just make sure it's compatible with the hypervisor. We are not a hypervisor company. We don't aim to be a hypervisor company. I think hypervisor is done. That's it, right? There's not much to do there anymore. You have your scale out data protection, petabyte scale from 1 to 10. Data integrity and everything. You actually check for all the data across the entire stack every 6 hours. So just to make sure that the data is correct there, right? So then from there, you have the ability to replicate data. And by the way, we do what we call universal deduplication. So we never, not in one system or multiple systems, we send data that has already been created. So we have native replication to a secondary site. So we only send data that has not been, it's not duplicated, right? To the point where you can install Datrium on your secondary site, load your 2-year-old Veeam or whatever backup that you have, backup exec data that you have on Datrium, and say replicate now. We will only replicate new data.
The stuff that has changed since that 2-year-old backup.
That's right.
Wow.
So this is we don't have even underlying the concept of we support VDisks and all that, but it's all very granular data. Bits of data. So we have customers that are shipping their Datrium to Europe, American customers, because we're not selling yet in Europe. But they're shipping there, they're loading their backups, and they initiate the replication. It's only the data that is unique that it will actually be shipped over there. And it's fully compressed as well and protected. And we have, I'll talk about encryption and FIPS in a moment.
Well, but and that I think
that's unique. There's nobody on the market today doing that.
That is huge because and I think that's for a lot of small and large companies. I mean, that's sort of the thing that is keeping people from moving fully into some type of massive cloud is the moving process. It just takes too much time. And
that's to a secondary data center. I'll get to
okay.
Probably in a second.
But even still, I mean, so that just covers the backup side of things. So then, so if you're going to migrate, workloads into a cloud somewhere, do you have something for that?
So we have also a software as a service backup, like backup as a service. It's part of what we call Cloud DVX. It's instantiated. You just enter your credentials, AWS credentials in the system in Datrium, and we do everything for you. There's EC2 instance. We manage everything automatically. It's fully automated. That enables you to replicate all your data that is on-premise from one site or multiple sites to AWS for long-term archiving.
Oh, okay.
And the same concept of fully universal deduplication that we use site to site is also done with AWS. We'll never send a bit of data that is already there at a very granular, I think it's like 4K granularity.
So for archiving, is that going into like AWS Glacier or something like that, or some other?
Not on Glacier. It goes on S3.
Okay.
It goes on S3. So but why this is important? Well, first, of course, you want to save on bandwidth to send over. But what people don't talk about is that ingress is not. AWS doesn't charge you for ingress, but when you're gonna do restore, then you're paying because they charge a fortune for egress.
Yep.
And what happens with us is it doesn't matter. We will never. No, we only store you one copy, and we only send one bit of data that it will be required in your destination site. We will never duplicate the data. So you could eventually, load up your old backups as well, and we will restore only the data that is required. So that's unique in the market today. Cloud DVX also do multi-management for multiple sites. And it will do orchestration. It will be the tool responsible to do orchestration for our DR to VMware on AWS.
So, Andre, let me make sure I understood that last thing you said correctly. So, if you have archive data stored off in AWS via Cloud DVX, and you want to pull that back on premise, you're only going to pull over like the minimum bare required bits to get your stuff back and operational again, versus pulling everything out, which is where the meter gets going really high. Is that kind of...
That's correct. So it depends your environment, right? So it's like if you're restoring a data center from zero, you need to bring everything that is required to run, right? So if you have 100 or 1,000 VMs, you're going to bring all the data, even though it's fully duplicated. Like when you think about VMs, it might be Windows or Linux. The binaries are all the same. Everything's the same. So you only bring that once.
Okay.
So that saves you a lot of bandwidth. Now, if you're restoring data, let's say a VM that you missed, or it was deleted, or you want to restore a snapshot that is on AWS, the amount of data that you bring is minimal because most of it either is actually running in your primary storage, all flash, or is already on your on-premise scale-out backup, which is a data store pool. So,
okay, I'm starting to get the picture of how it's just sort of already there.
Exactly.
I mean,
it's already there.
It's like the years ago, Volkswagen or somebody came out with this transmission design for the direct shift gearing, DSG gear shifting. And the idea behind it was basically no matter which way you go up or down, it's queuing up the next possible gear you're going to want before you even want it. So that's what it feels like in my head, sort of, is like,
Yeah, we don't preemptively go and restore data from
sure,
AWS.
Yeah, because you don't know what you're going to need until you actually initiate the restore. But
exactly, but that's part of it.
It's at least thinking ahead enough that it's the skeleton is there.
Right.
Now, do you have any control over how many copies of data? Do you have FTT equals settings that you can play with, or any kind of policies that you can change, or is that fully automated in the back end?
That's fully automated. Everything is on. Actually, that benchmark that we did with IOMark and Intel and Dell, 128 servers, 10 data nodes. It's everything was on by default as well, and we still 5 times faster than the fastest all-flash array and 10 times faster than the fastest HCI that has been tested.
What kind of connectivity are you running from the compute node?
Data node to so it's 10 gigabit is the required, but we do have also 25 gigabit.
Any 40 gig support, or are you running any fiber channel?
No, not 40 gig yet. It will come eventually, right? And also the interesting thing is, for the data nodes, we have 2 models. One is disk-based. The other one is all-flash.
Okay, I was wondering about that.
Yeah, so the reality is that when we write data to the data node, we create clumps. So like we get random IOs and we make them linear. So we stripe data on drives, which is hard drives are very effective for that, for writing linearly. And it's only writing, it's not reading constantly, because the reads are all local to flash, right, on the servers. So customers ask, so why should I buy the all-flash data nodes instead of the disks? Well, there's no real reason. The only reason why you should buy all-flash, let's say you have an application that you want to make sure if the server fails, this application is uploaded to the destination server very fast. So our worst case scenario, we're running like a SAN, right? We pull data out of the data pool. Mm-hmm. Our best scenario is all the data is local to the server. That said, that's when you would want all-flash to quickly upload the data. Make sure I can't afford more than 5 minutes of my application being impacted by some form of latency compared to running local on flash. So that said, the global or universal deduplication also applies to all the servers. So let's say you have a VM that failed and you need to upload the data to a new server, right? Mm-hmm. Some data is already shared across other VMs. So if it's a Windows VM, binaries and a few other things are there. So we don't even need to upload that. We only need to upload the unique data to that server. You start to think about all this universal deduplication that goes across servers, across data pools, across the cloud. That's sort of the direction where this technology is taking us.
So Andre, if say somebody wants to engage with you guys, obviously everything happens through partners, right?
Yes, we're 100% channel. Yes.
So anybody that wants to stand up Datrium in their organization, they work through a channel partner. Do you guys do pre-engineering, pre-sales engineering for potential customers, or not really?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. We would do that.
And then, so what kind of, when somebody stands this up, even if they're standing it up on a really small scale, say they're doing like 3 or 6, compute nodes, what is, like, in general, what do you see, somebody coming from a traditional, rack and stack SAN and servers kind of process? What's the migration like to get from their old infrastructure into Datrium?
Once you so let's say you already have your VMware environment, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. And let's say you have a flash device in each one of your servers.
Okay.
So it seems reasonable, right?
Or easy enough to add, yeah.
Either blades or rack mount servers. Once you deploy a data node, this data node become part of your vCenter. We have a fully integrated vCenter plugin. As a matter of fact, I don't know how much you know about our history, but the founders of Datrium, they come from VMware and from Data Domain. So the founders of Data Domain, and that's why we can do all these crazy deduplication and so on across the platform. But the very first VMware employees were like the first 20 or so came, like we have 2 of them that came and started Datrium. So they also understand the hypervisor world very well, even though we're not going that direction. Sure, yeah. But we also have part of the team that developed vCenter. So it's a very unique, unified sort of like experience.
So you stand.
And by the way, I don't know if you know Diane Green herself and her husband Mendel and the third VMware founder Ed Bugnon. They are all investors in Datrium.
Okay. So you stand up this first node, and then from there you're going where?
All right. So you enter your credentials to vCenter. The data node will install the plugin in vCenter for you. Mm-hmm. Now you have a plugin. When you go in the plugin, you list all the servers that are available in the cluster. and you say, I want to deploy Datrium in this 10 servers. So we do install this Vib, a driver that goes in vSphere.
Yep.
And then what you get is a new data store that is presented across, independent if you might already have your SAN, you're using NetApp or EMC, iSCSI, whatever you want. And then you get a new data store that is across all your servers at the same time, a single namespace on the servers. So all the servers will see this data store, and all you have to do is sort of like do a storage vMotion from your legacy to Datrium.
And that's just it.
That's probably the easiest way to explain how it would work.
So, all right. So in theory, then, like, you really don't even have to completely replace your infrastructure to get started with you guys.
You don't.
Wow.
It's very common for customers to just integrate it into their environment.
So then, okay? So but you do both. You have your own, nodes, the Datrium build nodes, right?
We don't build anything. We have an OEM with Dell. It's just a Dell server.
But it's branded. You have your own branded hardware, though, right?
Yeah, but the reason why we have it is just single throat to choke. Customers want a single throat to choke. So I have a problem with my environment. Who do I call? Well, call Datrium.
Okay.
They can call us anyway, to be very honest, right? Independent if it's HP, Cisco, Blaze, we'll handle the call. We do warm calls with VMware and all those vendors, warm handovers, right? But some customers want single throat to choke, and that's the only reason why we offer compute nodes.
I like the term a single throat to choke. That's nice.
Oh yeah, I've used that one for years. That's a good one.
I've not heard that before. That's good.
Really?
No. But okay. So and this is sort of the part that blows my mind about these things a little bit is it's you're running inside of VMware still, and it's kind of storage, but it's kind of also this replication stuff, and it's kind of backup. I mean, it's like, and this is okay. So welcome to my world, Andre. This is where it gets really hard for me as an independent consultant to walk into a customer and say, you guys need Datrium because it does these 50 things, when really all they really want to know is, how is my stuff taken care of so that our business runs? And I think this is the thing that I run into with all technology companies. You guys focus so much on what you do, and you know it so well that you just completely blow your customers and potential customers' minds away with how much you know. And everybody walks away dazed and confused, and then nobody buys anything.
No, I don't disagree with you.
And that's my challenge then, as the consultant who's trying to help them to bring it down from level 10 to level 1, and really just be like, okay, this and this is why it's a better deal, and maybe not even a better deal, but maybe it's a better solution to get you, know, what you need. And that's my other kind of pet peeve, Andre, is, I run into this all the time where people have worked with consultants and technology vendors where they sell them, 50 times more solution than they really need. And that drives me crazy because it's just money wasted.
That's typical with HCI and SAN. If you're going to end up with more capacity or more compute and so on. I mean, assuming that you're already doing, as a consultant, doing your job right?
Yeah.
This is but still you're going to end up with more.
Yeah, I'm just one more throat to choke, so. So what's your no knobs administration that you're showing us here?
Yeah, so that's the point. There's nothing, once you install the solution, there's nothing else. There's one thing that you need to do, one thing, which is create what we call protection groups. So if you want to replicate somewhere else, you can, you need to create a protection group to say, I want this to be replicated to the cloud or this to be replicated there. So you kind of need to select what you want. Besides that, there's nothing to configure. Nothing. I would say nothing is nothing. So I don't know if I get. I'm not in display mode, right? In slide mode. But basically, there's nothing. You don't configure compression. You don't configure erasure coding. It's everything is on by default. There's nothing to configure. And when you're talking about small businesses or even big businesses, like with thousands and thousands of VMs, this is a big value add because it's simplicity, and that's where HCI, the promise of simplicity of HCI, stopped being a promise because it was not anymore. Like any HCI solution on the market today, it's very complex.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's simple compared to SAN, but you need to know all these things, RF2 or F3 or erasure coding and so on. How you as an administrator decide how to go. It might be one click to enable or disable, but it's 100 pages that you need to read to understand if you should do one click.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question here regarding, obviously your cross hypervisor. So this is going to be a little bit varied, but we primarily focus on VMware here. So in line with your automation and your no knobs administration. So let's say I have an upgrade coming and I want to upgrade my environment to vSphere 6.7. Assuming that you guys are supported, what's the process like? Is there anything that you do any different when you have Datrium in your environment versus a regular vSphere environment?
No, nothing different. Just assuming that we have already validated a new version,
right?
With our solution, you just go through your regular update manager, whatever you're using to do your upgrade, your scripting. Nothing changes.
Okay.
And then on our side, of course, we also have the upgrades of our platform. So like upgrading the web and then upgrading a few things. That's all one click really. And zero impact, no downtime. That's table stakes nowadays, I would say.
So I'm not going to ask you how much it costs, but I am going to ask how you license it.
So you need to buy the data node, right? That's where the scale out backup, like you would buy a scale out backup from a third party vendor.
Okay.
And then we license per server.
Okay.
It's a license per server that you run.
Okay.
Then on the cloud EVX, there is also a cost. I don't know exactly how it's charged, but I know the first year is sort of free as well for now. What I didn't talk about is the announcement that we already did a sort of like a soft announcement, right, during Dell Technologies World, but we really take into a demo and really demonstrate the product, which is the full integration with cloud, with VMware on AWS, VMC, for DR, fully automated, orchestrated DR failover and failback from VMware on AWS. Now, the really interesting piece, at least for me, is you might think, oh, this is very expensive. The reality is it's not, because the way we do it, we don't require you to have VMC up and running 24 hours a day, receiving data to do the DR. So we leverage the AWS archiving in our cloud DVX. And once you need to fail over, we go and instantiate for you VMware on AWS. If it needs to be instantiated, or if you already have, we will use the existing environment. And then we instantiate the VMs for you. And because the data is already all on AWS,
of course, yeah,
and it's fully deduplicated, it's very fast. No, it's not synchronous. I'm not telling you it's going to be synchronous. It's not like push button here and it's going to be available there. We're talking about maybe 2 or 3 hours to have your environment up and running if you need. So in many cases, customers that don't have the budget for a secondary DR site, they can just leverage that as an option in case of disaster. No.
So okay, so
if shit hits the fan,
yeah,
I would say.
So if you're a Datrium customer utilizing Cloud DVX, which that piece is a separate SKU, right? You have to buy that.
That's right.
Okay.
It's as a service, right? It's subscription.
Okay, so you subscribe to that service. That gets your data off-prem into AWS for archiving purposes. you have a tornado hits your primary data center, and if you can live with, a 2 to 4 to 24-hour recovery period, the customer calls you and says, turn on our Cloud DR in VMware and AWS, or how does that work?
No. They go to the Cloud DVX interface on AWS, so that runs on their. So remember, they already have a AWS account that's running Cloud DVX on their environment using their EC2, using their S3. Now they need to go there and say, I want to orchestrate, I wanted to replicate, to fail over to VMware and AWS. And you would have already created a failover policy, right? Okay. How you want it to happen, how you want it to re-IP, how you wanted the VPN to be created.
Yep.
There's some things that need to happen in place so people can actually access those services.
Yep.
I think the only thing that will be left for you to do as a customer is to go to your DNS provider, like whatever, and change the DNS entries to point to the new IP addresses. If it's external, right? If it's internal, and you just need to establish a VPC with AWS, and then they're accessing the environment. And because VMC leverages NSX, if you have NSX on-prem, it becomes seamless. No, you don't need even to re-IP all that stuff.
See, and that's really nice.
VMware does that, right? By the way, VMware will do that today with vSAN. They will replicate. They use vSphere host replication to VMware and AWS, but it's synchronous. Right? It's happening all the time. So you're actually paying for your VMC resources when you're actually not using them.
And in this kind of scenario, you're saying basically you can stand up your Cloud DR subscription, on demand.
Correct.
That was really fun, Tony. We just did that totally synchronously. And then, so say you can, fix stuff within a isolated period of time, and then at that, say you need it for a month. And then after a month, you can fail everything back to on-prem and shut it down and stop paying for it.
So here for you that are geeks and techies like me, so now you're running your data center on AWS, but as you actually running the VMs on AWS, we started replicating back, fully deduplicated to Cloud DVX.
Okay.
So when you actually need to fail over back to your environment, it's a control. You say fail over. So we just power off the VM, move whatever data that is unique to Cloud DVX, and then we fail from Cloud DVX to your primary data center. Now, assuming that your primary data center is not brand new, like you're able to restore some, or maybe it was no power outage, the amount of data that will have to be replicated back is minimal.
Yeah.
Because of the global deduplication.
That's amazing.
If you're talking about a brand new data center, you had to move to, your data center is flooded, and of course, there'll be more data to move back, but at the same time, because of the global unique deduplication, the egress costs from AWS will be much lesser.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
And you could load your old backup if you have, like from tape, whatever, if you have something.
I mean, the cynic in me feels like AWS is going to find a way to get around that and charge you guys more money at some point. I mean, Jeff Bezos isn't the richest guy in the world.
We're giving them business for free. We're giving business to VMware and to AWS.
Man.
So that's the point. That's when I talk like, I've been there. I've been with EMC. I've been with SAN. I've been with VMware. I know hypervisor world. When I actually was VDI. I've been with Nutanix. I've done HCI. This is a whole new game.
Yeah,
this is game changing.
Okay.
This is the first time I've actually had the architecture explained to me and I actually understood it.
Yeah, this is amazing, Andre. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I've seen so many presentations of eMugs, and I have to be honest, a little salesy, and it's I want to understand the architecture. So thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure.
So, all right, Tony, do you have anything else next to go into? Because I'm sure we have other things we can talk about here, but do you have
I'm good for now.
Any other further questions? Okay. So the Gartner numbers came out recently, Andre, for specifically, hyperconverged infrastructure solutions. And I noticed that Datrium basically wasn't even on the map. And is that because you guys are not necessarily grouped in the same category as the Nutanix or other thing, or Dell EMC, or is that just because you're not big enough yet?
Yeah, I think it's a combination, to be honest. So first of all, I don't know if you remember, Gartner had something called Integrated Systems Magic Quadrant, where you would have HCI players, and then you have something like vBlock, right, which is a reference architecture, or something like Oracle Exadata. Mm-hmm. So clearly the world is moving to HCI sort of format, right? Or server power storage, if you will. So they decided to kill that that Magic Quadrant and created the HCI Magic Quadrant. So now you have this weird situation where, sure, HCI, as we knew from 10 years ago, like what Nutanix was doing, what VMware is doing, but you have all these new entrants who are evolving and this technology and architecture is very fast and getting to something completely different. That's not your traditional servers, hard drives loaded into servers and everything scale out and so on. So that's a challenge. So for that, I think we're going to have to classify us as HCI, because I don't see Gartner creating a new Magic Quadrant anytime soon.
Well, what I find funny is like there's companies in here that I don't know that they necessarily have a real HCI solution like Cisco. And
they have Hyperflex. Hyperflex.
Oh, okay. And then like the Chinese company Huawei is on there.
They do have too. A HCI.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think Gartner, we need to figure it out. But remember, Gartner, they're not ahead of the innovation, right? Mm-hmm. They are way behind. Like they just literally created a HCI Magic Quadrant, and we've been talking HCI for the past 6-7 years.
All right. It came across my feed, and I was just curious about this because I'm like, Nutanix is the leader.
Sure.
And
they are. They are.
Makes sense because they're massive.
They are. They have their merits on that as well. Right? I'm not discounting their merits. They have the first mover advantage as well, and so on. They having to innovate in a number of different things because all the other players that are doing HCI as just a storage, software architecture, and so on, they're catching up on them, right? Mm-hmm. So now they have to go into hypervisor. They need to do other things up in the stack. The other point is, yes, we are a newer company. We have sub 1,000 customers or so, and Gartner looks for Gartner. They are charting those Magic Quadrants for big companies, right? Yeah. For big companies. So eventually we'll get there. Hopefully in the next one. But I do think it's going to have to be in the HCI because I don't see them creating another one or going back to integrated systems, because that's where probably we should fall. Integrated systems.
Yeah. So, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit at the beginning, but is Datrium today, a profitable company, or are you guys still working off of investor funding?
No, we're not yet profitable, right? Okay. We are venture backed at this point in time. I don't know how much I can talk here about.
Oh, that's fine. I don't want to get you in trouble either, but this is a public show. So.
But Nutanix is not either, right? EMC was and it was acquired. That people ask me, so will Datrium be acquired? I said, well, we're not building to be acquired. We want to go public and so on. But that said, look, EMC was acquired. Mm-hmm. So it's a very dynamic market, and things happening.
This harkens back to me, like the last couple of VM Worlds I've been to, it seems like the show floor itself, where all the vendors are, it's the last couple of ones specifically, at least, were really heavy on storage vendors and backup and disaster recovery vendors. And it seems, and that's just kind of a market thing that you notice when you just go to something like that. Does it seem to you that the market is oversaturated with storage and availability vendors, or are there other new companies still coming up with somebody who thinks they have an even better idea? Like, or do you, at some point there's got to be a consolidation, right? Because we can't have 500 different vendors.
It is happening. HP acquires SimpliVity and
Nimble,
and Cisco acquires SpringPath, and there is a consolidation happening. But I don't see it stopping. You know why? Because the gold is the data. Whoever is managing the data, that's where the money is. It's where the data lives. It's where whoever managing the data is where the money is going to make the money. And I don't see that stopping. Now, will another company come out with a different architecture that makes sense? Yes, for sure, eventually, right? What I can tell you is that HCI, as people know today, that scale that has not been used by the hyperscalers for at least 15 years. So you look at Facebook with OpenRack and Bryce Canyon, what they are doing with Open Compute Platform. It's disaggregated. It's like this, like what Datum is doing, or Google is doing that today as well. They're not doing HCI. That's a misconception. It's been for a long time.
That's an interesting question, because like I as a IT guy sitting in Midwestern USA, I don't know how Facebook runs their operation. And I know that they are getting into all kinds of weird stuff because they develop. I read something last year that they're developing, routers for NFV or NVIDIA network function virtualization for the telecom industry.
Right.
And so, that kind of blew my mind a little bit, because it's like, why is Facebook, this social media marketing advertising company, building hardware for the telecom industry? But what, from what of how they operate on some of the stuff, are they doing, do they like build in-house all their own stuff, or are they running off of companies like Datrium and, Nutanix, or what are they doing?
No, they build all their stuff. They are in such a competitive market. They need to be so efficient that they need innovation all the time. They build all their stuff. Both Google and
so they're
Facebook.
So Facebook
they're open about it, right?
So at some point, and this is just pure conjecture here. Would you see a company like a Facebook starting up their own version of AWS?
They could. There was a bookshop who created a cloud computing company.
Well, exactly. That's the point, which is actually like more profitable than the bookshop.
Exactly. But here is the thing. The operations that they run in their data centers is no different than what you need in your mom and pop shop, or your pizza on the corner.
Yeah.
You need resiliency, you need predictability, and you need performance.
Yep.
That's what you need. And that's what they need. It's no different. They do it at a different scale and so on, but there's no difference. It's the core objectives are the same. Data protection, data resiliency, performance, DR. That's what we do. That's why we're here.
Wow. All right. So if you're this is kind of my final question, and then we can kind of wrap this up. If you're, meeting a customer for the first time, they go through their list of questions. Usually in that scenario, because they don't know exactly what all you can do, they might miss something and not ask you something. What kind of things should somebody be asking a vendor like you in that kind of a scenario that maybe they're not thinking of? So what's the question that gets forgotten that really should get asked?
Well, can you hear me well, by the way? Because I'm hearing a weird noise when you speak.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay.
I hear it too.
Look, customers are not silly. They're not dumb. They do their homework. They know the question. Most of them know the questions they will ask, especially in some shops with more engineers and so on. I think sometimes it gets overlooked in the entire discussion is the whole the simplicity. People tend to ask too many questions about, especially some markets are different than others. I know that if, like, as an example, if I go to Germany, they want to know how the I/O goes from this VM, where does it go through, how it's displayed, how it's protected, how is it, and we need to explain that. Whereas if I go to here in US, people are a little bit more forgiving and say, oh, okay, so it seems that this is fast, it's resilient, and you have references, right? I can talk to customers, and that is good enough for me. But I think sometimes, and this is part of our, everybody's curious as well. We actually ask too many questions, and that diverts the discussion from how we actually helping the business from actually going into the deep in the technology. Okay. I don't know if people miss asking questions. I think they sometimes ask too many questions.
Well, and I suppose it's
natural,
fair,
right? Yeah, it's just natural. I would ask questions as well.
And I think it's fair. I just think that in my experience, it just happens occasionally where you can be talking so in depth about something that there's this obvious elephant in the room, as it were, of something that should have been asked that you realize later on. Can you guys hear me?
Your audio's getting worse, dude.
It must just be this wire.
Oh, it's him, right? I was thinking it was my AirPods, but it's
written.
Okay.
It happens occasionally. I gotta fix it. I just reassembled everything, so
I can't hear you. You're gonna have to.
I can't hear you at all now.
You can't hear me at all.
No, I mean we can hear the audio, but we can't understand
it. Okay, is that better? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
No, not any better.
Jeez. Right at the end.
Yeah.
Right at the end, too. Crap. Any better?
No, it's not.
No.
Let me unplug and replug again.
Yeah, we're going to have to cut this out.
Anything now?
No, it's still bad.
Is it just really staticky, or what does it sound like?
You sound like a robot.
Oh, I'm Cyloning. Okay.
Like an old robot, like an 8-beat one.
Like an 80s,
like
80s robot.
Like a beatboxing robot.
I got to think about how to do this.
So while he's figuring that out, real quick, I don't know if you're in charge of it or if you can get word back to the people that are in charge of it, but Britton and I are both V-experts, and we sincerely appreciate the effort that Datrium goes to every year for the V-expert gift. You guys are consistently one of the coolest vendors with one of the coolest gifts, and just kind of wanted to let you know that it's appreciated and it's definitely noticed. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I'll tell the marketing team about it.
All right. So I switched my feedback to you guys on the laptop. Is that better?
Completely better. It's cleared up.
All right. Well.
Yeah.
The recording is fine. You guys sound fine, so we're okay in that end of things. It's just
okay.
It's just a Zoom problem.
Yeah. So going back to the question about the people asking questions, I think the architectural discussion is good. Like what we went through here is good. It's great. I think it's when people want to go deeper and deeper and deeper, and some markets are different than others, I understand, is where things how important is that to you, really? How we pack the IOs, how it's a 4K or 8K, and so on. That's where things.
The customer really needs to know their workload at that point. They need to understand that to be able to get good data back to you guys for engineering.
Sure. And maybe we should have papers for that as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess in that light of things, like, when you're working with like from if I was a partner with you guys, what are you looking for, what kind of things would you expect the partner to be responsible for in kind of engineering and figuring out and answering some of those questions, and how much do they need to come back to you guys to get real answers for? Or is it more of a team effort,
It is a team. It is a team effort. We work with the partners, right? But we have system engineers, sales engineers on the field as well that go and work with them. But really, the sizing of our solution is so simple, and because also we don't have all this east and west traffic between servers. It's mostly north and south, and only the writes that are going south for the most part. Networking is, for the most customers, they don't have to do anything. So what we really need to do from a sizing perspective is really make sure that we have enough flash to host the workload, given the deduplication and compression, make sure that the entire work data set is there. And that's about it, to be honest. There's not much more. And of course, you need to, like, how am I going to connect to the network, right? Do I need cables that go cross switches and so on? Those things that would go with any architecture.
So, I mean, this is sort of the thing that kind of sticks out to me as we're talking about this, Andre. It almost feels like it's too simple. I mean, do you must?
I'll take that. It's a good point, though.
That's what I'm wondering, though. Is like, have you gotten feedback from potential customers ever where they say, like, I don't believe you guys because you're clearly missing something, because it can't be that easy? Do you get that a lot?
We do. We actually have a customer, a Fortune 100 customer, who deployed Atrium, and I mentioned about the university duplication, no east and west traffic, and all that. So the networking team reached out to the server team, say something is wrong. Your networking traffic dropped by more than 50% compared to whatever was there before.
Previous solution.
And they said, previous solution. And they say, it was Atrium. They thought something was wrong. You can't bend physics. What you can do is write better software. That's what I say.
Interesting.
So, as an example, talking about data gravity, and data has mass, so applications need to live close to the data, and the bigger the data becomes, the harder it is to move applications around, cloud to cloud and all that. So now imagine this universal deduplication at a much bigger scale, and be able to, the same data that is living on AWS is also living at the same time on Azure, and the application can start moving around. I don't know why I went on this tangent, but
that's okay.
But what was that? That has to do with the infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
So the only way to beat physics is writing better software. I think that's my
all right.
My quote.
Well, why don't we? Unless you have another question, Tony, I think we can kind of end it there.
Yeah, I do have just one more question.
All right.
So, when you're scaling up and you're scaling out, either adding more compute or needing to increase your storage on the nodes themselves, I assume that you support hot add for adding more SSD into the nodes.
Sure.
To take anything down. But along with that, do you also need to plan for additional capacity or adding additional data protection nodes?
So if you have one data node, the data is erasure coded with two parity in a single data node across disks. Once you add the second data node, the data node pool itself will be restructured automatically, and the erasure coding now is across data nodes. And as you keep adding data nodes, that are all will automatically starting to distribute across data nodes for the new data and for the existing data.
Okay.
And it's not the way it happens. Actually, going a little bit under the cover is the data nodes don't have intelligence really. There's no real intelligence. It's not like it's a cluster. The intelligence is on the servers with our software. Yep. So everything happens on the servers. So if I need to redistribute data, it's not one data node sending data to another node. It happens, the servers read the data and will redistribute, and all that with spare capacity, with spare CPU, right? So from a sizing perspective, up to 20% of CPU we will take. That's the trade-off to move from physical controllers. If you have spare CPU capacity, we have something called insane mode that will use up to 40% if it's not utilized by VMs, by applications.
Okay, so they get the priority.
Yeah, VMs get the priority. So I think the right way to say is like up to 20%. It's what we require in a 7 gig RAM. Like seven and a half gig RAM.
It's like Tesla ludicrous mode. How fast do you want to go?
It's Tesla. Yeah, exactly. It is. You're right.
Cool.
But you're not going to switch to manufacturing cars anytime soon, though.
No. We're software. We are pure software here.
All right. Well, thanks, Andre. This has been insightful, and I feel like I actually understand what Atrium does now.
Yeah, exactly. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. I know it's very unique, and to really understand, the architecture needs to see through a session like that. I'm more than happy to do a deeper dive if you want, and maybe offline and so on.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap us up. Thanks again, guys, and I don't have anything in terms of the future episodes of the show. I don't have anybody scheduled yet, but we are working on that. So thanks again, Andre, for joining us. This has been awesome, and I'm gonna, like in our previous episode, Ariel from VMware, he's also attached to vBrownBag. He plugged the vBrownBag series that Datrium did, and I haven't had a chance to go back through and watch those yet, but I really want to now, because I think that'll help even more. So if you're looking for more resources, check out the vBrownBag that Datrium did with I think it was a build day, and there's tons of more information out there. Andre, if people want to follow you on Twitter, how do they do that?
At Andre Leibovici.
Cool.
It's maybe you can put in the somewhere.
Yeah, I'll stick it in the notes on the episode too. So, all right. Well, hey, thanks again, and I'm gonna play us out, and we can chat for a minute afterwards. Been Gigacast episode 16 for Sunday, June 3rd. Thanks again to Andre. You can follow him at Andre Leibovici, sorry. And I am at VCIXNV. Tony's at Import Car Guy. We will get back to you soon on check our Twitter feed was at VGigacast, and we'll have future episode information about who's coming up next. We're going to hopefully start to do these a little bit more often than once a month, but that remains to be seen. Thanks again, guys, and we will talk to you all later.